Beginning in this tutorial, we start our second look at the Dojo Toolkit. In our second look, we're going to go more in depth with the Dojo Toolkit and what's available to us when we choose the Dojo Toolkit for development purposes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to discuss a little bit more about the nature of Dojo. And then we talk about how the Dojo Toolkit is split up into different sections. And then we're going to get into the basics of how we can use Dojo and looking at the documentation that's available to us through the Dojo webpage. After we understand a little bit more about the basics of how Dojo works, we're going to take a look at the different animation effects that are available through the Dojo Toolkit, as well as the controls that we'll be able to use because of our use of the Dojo Toolkit. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the resources and tools that will be available to us with the use of Dojo. So first of all, let's go ahead here and talk a little bit more about the nature of Dojo. Now, Dojo has received support from a lot of different companies, including Zen, IBM, and Sun Microsystems. Now, it kind of makes sense that Dojo has received this support because it does have a slight flavor of PHP or maybe even a little bit of Java in there. Now, the reason why it tastes a little bit like those programming languages is because it does use something called a require statement. In addition to that, the overall approach to Dojo has been an object-oriented approach, and it does lend itself well to people who know PHP. Now, what makes Dojo a little bit different from some of the other libraries that we have taken a look at is the scope of the toolkit. More or less, Dojo provides an entire platform to develop on. Dojo provides new functionality and quicker ways to do things in JavaScript, while not rewriting the things that work well in native JavaScript. Dojo provides standard interface elements to developers right out of the box. Also, Dojo makes it easier to work with the things that we want to deal with without having to download a lot of additional code. Finally, Dojo makes it pretty easy for us to create our own custom widgets and then package those so that others would be able to reuse those in the future. Now, the Dojo Toolkit is actually a collection of libraries. I'm just going to scroll down here, and you see here we have the Core, Digit, and Dojo X. Now, each one of these little sections of the Dojo Toolkit handle specific items and functionality that we will want to employ in our use of the Dojo Toolkit. So first off, the Core. Dojo Core is a very small JavaScript library that contains everything we need in order to perform AJAX, event handling, packaging, CSS-based querying, animations, JSON, and language utilities. So it extends the native JavaScript language and allows us to do a lot of the things that we would want to do. Next is Digit. Digit is more about our interface widgets. Now, actually, Digit is short for Dojo Widget, and these are skinnable widgets that have built-in accessibility and localization. So if you can imagine a user interface element, more than likely it's in the Digit. Now, next is Dojo X. Now, Dojo X is kind of a miscellaneous library. This is where some of the more cutting edge and experimental aspects of our Dojo Toolkit reside. Now, some of these are not necessarily all that experimental, but they are in Dojo X because they are a combination of different elements that don't neatly fit into either Core or Digit. They're pretty advanced structures, such as charting. You do have the ability to chart. You also have the ability to take your applications offline, so you can store data on the local machine, which is a very nice feature. We also have a number of other little widgets in this category that are graphic-based, including vector drawing. So those are the three different components that make up the Dojo Toolkit. And underneath each one of those, you'll see that there's a Learn More About, and I'm just going to click on each one of these in turn. So learn more about Core, and it takes us to a page that provides us with some good information about how Core is set up. So basically it's the standard foundation for everything else you're going to want to do in Dojo. So everything else that we'll see in the Dojo Toolkit is built upon the core. It does have a lot of good information in here, and if you have time, I'd recommend that you go through here and read all of it. I'm going to skip on down here to the bottom, and it talks about the base features. So even within the core, we have the base, and then we have the core optional modules, and then the util optional module. Now, because the Dojo Toolkit is broken up into these different modules, we only have to load the things that we need. So we're not going to have to force our end users to download a whole bunch of stuff that they don't need. I'm going to go ahead and jump back here to the main page, and let's take a look at the digit page. And one of the cool things about the digits is that they are cross-browser compatible, and more or less they're going to appear the same way in your different browsers. There's a built-in theme that goes with the digits, but you can change that theme relatively easily. There are a number of digit themes out there, and you can actually create your own. So here it's giving some examples of digits using some layouts, and looks like we have some tree. We also have information here about internationalization and localization. I'm going to go back, and let's take a look at Dojo X. Dojo X is where, like I said, some experimental, inventive things can be found. This is kind of the testing ground for a lot of the things that people have found pretty useful in the Dojo Toolkit over the years. Some information talking about the grid, the data API, charting, vector drawing, all very impressive stuff. So here it's talking about taking your application offline, and Dojo Offline makes it so you can work with Google Gears to bring information offline for your web applications. That's extremely powerful. We also have some graphic elements. Here it's showing that we have the Lightbox. We also have a number of other image manipulation items. And there's even more that's available inside of the Dojo X components. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the main page here. And that concludes our introduction to the second look at the Dojo Toolkit.